Hello and welcome to the OnStage Colorado Podcast. I'm Alex Miller here with arts reporter Toni Tresca. Hey, Toni. So you were just on your phone with your mom.
I had to call, wish my mom a happy Mother's Day, and I had ordered her some flowers and chocolates and things, so I got to be on the phone with her as she opened those up and opened that delivery. So it was a good Mother's Day.
You're a good son. Yeah, well, I'll give a shout out to my wife, Jen, and also my daughter, Brittany, and my daughter-in-law, Kaylin, this is her first Mother's Day. So that's always an exciting one.
Aww.
So, yeah, kind of a rainy Mother's Day.
Shout out to all the moms out there. Yeah.
Yeah. Hopefully some people took their moms to the theater this weekend because it's a great place to go on a rainy weekend. So, of course, you'll be hearing this on Tuesday, but still fresh off the vibe of Mother's Day. So you and I both saw the Lehman Trilogy this weekend, which is kind of a long-anticipated show that the Denver Center Theater Company brought to town. So we'll talk about that here in just a little bit. And then, as usual, we'll review some of the latest shows that we've seen and reviewed that we have on the site. And we're also trying to something a little different. So Toni and I were talking, and in the past, we've done a pretty comprehensive rundown of all the shows coming up in the next week or two. But with so many shows around the state, we think it's gotten, a little boring. So all this information is on our website calendar, which tracks just about every theater company in Colorado, along with some other things like dance, comedy, music, and we're always expanding it. So yeah, what are we going to do now, Toni?
Yeah, so rather than kind of doing that laundry list where we run through all of those shows that are, as Alex just mentioned, already on our website, we're going to kind of switch it up and do a bit of a monthly shout out, kind of like a top 10 of shows around the state that we think might be a good bet to attend. And we're calling this latest segment our Colorado Headliners.
Right. Yeah. So, it's not meant to be a catch-all about all the bestiest shows coming up, but just our take on what's new, what's interesting, and even some old things that are always worth going to. So.
Yeah, and just because if it's not on the list, it doesn't mean that it's not good or worth seeing. It just didn't give us the theater feelies like some of the other ones.
Okay.
So it's going to be our deeper dive into these 10 shows.
All right. Well, so we'll get into our headliner shows here in just a bit. And later in the podcast, I have an interview I did with Chris Medina at Funky Little Theater Company in Colorado Springs. So this is indeed a little theater company. Chris has a great story about how the theaters made it through several moves, a pandemic, and the usual budget constraints to keep producing shows for the Springs audience. Monkey also has a kind of a cool new program to help those with children get some fun professional childcare during some of their shows. So, there's not a lot of theater organizations in the Springs, so Funky's an important part of the scene there. So stick around for that. I also wanted to give a shout out to new correspondent Kit Baker, who has his first review up on our site now for Grapefruit Lab's production of Whiskey with Strangers, which you know all about as well, Toni, because you did a feature about this in Westward. He also has a feature about these opera awards for female artists, and a friend of the pod, Amanda Berg-Wilson, won one for a production this summer that'll be at Opera Steamboat, and Shia Patino, who will pair with Opera Colorado for another in the fall. So congrats to both of them. And thanks to Kit for jumping on.
Yeah, that's awesome. And I read Kit's writing, his bio. It sounds like he's got a pretty extensive career as well as a blog of his own where he does his own theater musings.
Yeah. I can't remember how I connected with him. I think he made a comment on a show a few months ago, and I looked at his blog and I was like, holy crap, this guy knows what he's talking about. And I invited him. I said, hey, if you're ever interested, in contributing. And so a few months later, he was like, here I am. So, he has a long history of working with arts organizations as an administrator and a development person who's raised millions. And he's worked with everything from the Lincoln Center in New York to the Tate Gallery, as well as Colorado organizations like Catamounts, the Curious, the Dairy. So definitely knows his stuff. So looking forward to hearing more from Kit there. So welcome to Kit. We now have, I think Kit is kind of like number 11 as far as regular contributors to OnStage Colorado. So we'd still love to get some more outside the Denver metro area. So specifically, love to have, someone, add to what we've got up in Fort Collins and maybe out in, who knows, Aspen Way or on the Western Slope, things like that. So if anybody's interested, give us a shout. So, all right. Well, Toni, what's on tap for our main topic today?
So we're going to be revisiting the subject of theater reviews. And if you are feeling a little bit of deja vu and thinking, wait a second, didn't Toni and Alex already talk about this recently? You are not hallucinating. That is correct. We did. We had a conversation with Alex Caterlin in our March 12th episode titled Who Needs a Critic? But today we kind of wanted to expand that a little bit to what a theater review should be, the purpose of a review.
Yeah, so I was going to say it's a little bit of inside theater baseball, but I do think it's important for, not just for the theater community, but for anybody who wants to read reviews. But recently there was this sort of a little bit of a kerfuffle on Facebook.
That's a kind way to characterize it.
So there's a theater blogger in the state, David Marlowe, who writes a blog called Marlowe's Musings. And he's been reviewing shows for a long time. He's been a great supporter of the Colorado theater community. But he wrote a review of Heartbeat of the Sun at Cherry Creek that some people thought was not the greatest, and not because it was critical, but because it didn't say enough about why he didn't like the show. So yeah, what was your take on some? And I guess the other thing was saying was like it really brought up some of that nastiness that shows up on social media where people were just like went right to like insulting him and stuff like that, and it's like, yeah. I can't say it was a New York Times ready review, and it definitely, was definitely lacking in some ways, but it's like, man, take it easy.
I think I saw a lot of people in the threads really taking offense with the kind of final line of see it if you must that the review ends on after not really kind of elaborating on why one might not actually want to see it. It kind of was very synopsis, see it if you must.
Yeah.
And so he shared that on around May 4th in the Colorado Theater Guild community. And yeah, like you mentioned, things kind of got vicious quick. There were 68 comments on there before the Colorado Theater Guild ended up closing comments on the post. And yeah, it really, people had the knives out. It was everything from like personal attacks to just like, and then people eventually that ended up attacking each other in the comments thread. And I honestly kind of
blood in the water.
Yeah, I think there was a little bit of that, and I think perhaps people were just primed because that post was on May 4th, and Julia Toby, who is a local actor and producer, had made a post on May 3rd entitled "How much of a theater review should focus on synopsis and how much on specific feedback," which also kind of sparked a very lively conversation in that comments thread. So I think maybe people were just in the mood to talk about this. So we figured might as well make that our main topic for this week. Right.
So, yeah, it's a good question. What should a review be? And I will say that, I've been in touch with another website similar to OnStage Colorado called DC Theater Arts. And of course, they cover many more theaters in the DC area than we do in Colorado. But she's the woman there shared. They have a style guide, and I'd had something like this, but I kind of borrowed some from it, and so when we have reviewers join, we talk about we give them this and say don't just write a synopsis. It's not a book report. We want to know things like how well are the actors realizing their roles. How good is the lighting? And things like do the actors seem like they're in the dark or not well lit? How's the set? Does it establish the world of the play? Can the set pieces be moved around with a lot of noise or hassle? If there are music or sound effects, do they add to the show or not? How's the play? Does that make sense? So all these things that, we want people to answer when they're writing a review. And of course, you can't always tick on all of them. But, we also say, see the whole show, be fair, be respectful, be honest, and make it useful. And so, going back to Julia's post about synopsis versus real feedback, it does need to be useful, but and there was another comment on hers and saying like, I think these reviewers just out for free tickets. It's like, yeah, right. There might be some out there like that.
That was actually a separate post. That was a separate post. Okay. Bernie Cardell had attempted to, I think, kind of cool the mood by making a separate Facebook post away from that one in the Colorado Theater Guild about David that people were getting worked up to kind of discuss it. But naturally, that post also got vicious, and then he eventually had to shut that down, stating post deleted. We're not ready to have that discussion, maybe at a later time. But when has that ever stopped anybody? The comments and the conversations continued on that post that Bernie had made about deleting the post because we weren't ready for the conversation, including the comment you just mentioned from Ken Goodwin, who is the executive producer of Performance Now, who said, and I quote, "I found that a lot of critics mainly want free tickets to shows."
Yeah, that's kind of a unnecessary dig, but there aren't that many critics around to start with, and of course, if a theater thinks that, they should not give us tickets or invite us, or we've got plenty more other places to go. So, and you and I both go to shows that we probably wouldn't have gone to in our endless quest to try and recover as much as we can. Sometimes we go out and see stuff, but but mostly I consider, if I'm at a show and I've got press passes, I consider it my responsibility. I have to write a review. I've got to, justify my place there. It's also true that and you go to shows where you might have done a preview and you might go to the show as well. And then, there's been only a couple of times, but I think this has happened with other reviewers where a show, whatever we think of it, it's just something that I can't think of a single good thing to say about this show. And there's not really any point in me posting a review that's all about that. And so I'll tell them, look, I don't think this is going to be, and you could take issue with that too and say, well, you should write that review. You should warn people away from this thing. And I think that's a valid comment as well. But sometimes I just don't know what to say.
I got some advice early on from another critic that said that if you were truly just going to pan a show, you maybe should consider what net value does that actually add? Right. If you are just going to destroy it. But I do think that there is a difference between kind of just panning and only negative things to say versus what I always aspire to do in the reviews that I write is every review is going to have something that worked and something that could use some more improvement, and then I kind of try to recommend who might like this show. If it's not me, what is this kind of within the theater community? What other play, what other musical, what other movie, even other piece of pop culture, linking that back to. So even if it's not my cup of tea, how can I maybe help it find that potential audience that the play was designed for? Because I know I'm not the target audience of every single show and play. And so I think it's okay to acknowledge that while also then still being meh, not for me.
For sure. And another thing I would just touch on real quick is star ratings, which I've considered, and I've talked to several people about it and kind of thought about it. And ultimately we've concluded that it's just too broad of a stroke. People get hung up on, even though we live in a star rating society, it's really, you can't sum up a lot of shows with just a couple of, stars. So we've kind of avoided that, and we're making people read the review to not just make a quick snap decision. It's it's only 3 stars,
Absolutely. I had the same conversation with my editors over at Boulder Weekly about whether or not we should introduce a star system / a critic's pick. Because for Boulder Weekly, I write batches of reviews. So 3 to 4 shows, 1 or 2 times a month, kind of a roundup. And we were kind of thinking, maybe it would be interesting to do that. But we ultimately decided that we would rather have people actually read the content. If you just simplify everything to the star rating, people look at the stars, they move on, and that's all you get of your show. So we kind of thought it would be, even for shows that maybe I didn't like as much, it would be more useful to actually just have people read the text to find that out, rather than just 1 or 2 stars gone. Not gonna do that.
Yeah. The other thing that some news outlets do is they'll do this little synopsis of, maybe there's 5 bullet points at the top of the thing, kind of summarizing, which could have the same chilling effect of having people actually read it. So we're just kind of staying old school for now on that. And then another thing I wanted to talk about was, there's different audiences for this content. So, what theater folks want to see is often not the same thing as what the general public wants to know. If I'm the director of a play, I would love to get, I might be interested to get some take on how things came together, on the technical side.
Absolutely. And I think that kind of discussion really gets to the heart of that thread on Facebook that Julia Tobey kind of started, because there were a lot of theater folks who kind of were chiming in there, arguing that these kind of reviews should be, a lot of people have said about 10% synopsis, 90% specific feedback. That was a pretty common answer in that thread. Nick Rigg Johnson said it's a review, not a book report. If your first 3 paragraphs are just the plot, you failed at your job as a reviewer. And so kind of things like that. But I do push back slightly, because I don't know if everybody who is not within the theater community does have a working knowledge of what these subject matters and plays are. Like,
absolutely.
Anytime I have to go into the newsroom at Boulder Weekly or Westward to pitch these shows, I get told constantly by my editors that you should pretend that people have no idea what theater is. You should pretend you are talking to Joe Bob off of the street, and that is who you are writing your review for. You are not writing for a theater audience, because, and maybe this is not right, but if you disagree, you should definitely feel free to reach out to my editors and tell them that you'd like me to do some slightly different coverage. But this is not what we've been hearing, is that it's not the theater people who are really swayed by these reviews. It's the general audience who was actually on the fence about it. And so I think that there is a different kind of language. Like, whenever I write for OnStage Colorado, that's a much more theatery site. So I feel I can get a little bit more into the weeds on the actual theatricality of the piece. But when I'm writing for Boulder Weekly, in which I have maybe 400 words, I'm trying to both communicate everything that like why you should see it or not spend your money on this production, what the actual show is in that words. So you kind of do have to be, you really have to be thoughtful about it, particularly if you know you're writing for a more general audience.
Yeah, because if you're talking to someone and you say, "Hey, I saw this show," what are the 2 questions they're going to ask? How was it? And what's it about? Unless, they happen to know the show. And like you said, a lot of people don't know the shows. And maybe they'll ask how much it costs.
I'm honestly surprised. I think to me, Stephen Sondheim is like Shakespeare. Mm-hmm. Everybody knows that. But I was talking about Company the other day to my editors over at Westward, and they were like, I have no idea what you're talking about. You cannot assume that people know what that is. Sondheim, I've heard the name, but I don't know all of his musicals. I have no idea what Company's about. You're going to have to tell me what it's about. And I was like, fair enough. I'll revise my, and that was a preview, not a review, granted, but I was like, fine, I can revise this a little bit more to give some more context.
Right. Yeah. And, also, it's also true that someone who's general public that maybe doesn't know a lot about theater can learn some things. Someone could read a review and read a paragraph about how the lighting did this or that, and they might think, "Wow, I've never even thought about that." Because a lot of people don't. They take in the story and but all that background of stuff that they may not be thinking about, but it all adds to the quality of the show, whether it's good, bad, or kind of neutral. So it's fun to see people starting to think about that. Like, and sometimes I'll talk to, like, when I take some of my kids or even my granddaughters to shows, and I'll ask them, like, did you notice this and that? And they'll usually be kind of like, well, not really, but now that you say it, it's interesting for them to think about it.
Yeah, I think that a good review is pushing audiences forward. You should be introducing something of value, commenting on actual technical capacities of the production you saw, not just speaking in vague statements about the play itself. But I do think that some amount of synopsis is necessary in these things.
Yep. Cool. Any other thoughts on that, Toni, before we move on?
I'm sure I've got more thoughts on it, but come back to me next week.
Yeah, well, we'd love to hear your thoughts. If you're listening to this, you can always comment on the blog part of this podcast that's on our website or on website or on the, I don't even know how much comment possibility is on some of the podcast platforms out there. If you can, go for it. All right. Well, we're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, we will do our first Colorado Headliners segment to highlight the 10 shows we're looking forward to in the week or two ahead, and plus my interview with Chris Medina from Funky Little Theater Company in Colorado Springs. So stick around. We'll be right back. OnStage Colorado is grateful for support from Upstart Moves Theater in Ouray, whose new production of Good People opens May 31st. The action takes place in Southie, the Boston neighborhood where this month's paycheck covers last month's bills. Margie has just been fired again. Can an old boyfriend maybe offer some hope? An uproarious look at the bingo game of life. Tickets and info at upstartmoves.org. The OnStage Colorado podcast is also sponsored by Town Hall Arts Center, whose production of The Prom opens May 24th. Big city stars set themselves on a collision course with small-town PTA politicians in this sequin-covered musical comedy. Get tickets at townhallartscenter.org. OnStage Colorado is brought to you by the Colorado Springs Fine Arts Center at Colorado College, whose production of Rent plays May 2nd through June 2nd at the Main Stage Theater. Jonathan Larson's musical follows a year in the life of a group of impoverished young artists and musicians struggling to survive and create in New York's Lower East Side under the shadow of HIV/AIDS. Tickets at fac.coloradocollege.edu. Support also comes from the Boulder Ensemble Theater Company, Betsy, whose upcoming season starts in July and includes Grounded, Enemy of the People, The Ballad of Paula Aguilar, Little Women, Hope and Gravity, and The White Chip. More information at betsy.org. All right, welcome back to the OnStage Colorado Podcast. I'm Alex Miller.
And I'm Toni Tresca. And now it's time for our very first Colorado headliners. Alex, are you ready with your top 5 shows?
Yeah, do you have yours?
I've got mine here. Do you maybe want to hand it back and forth?
Sure. Well, I know we can both talk about Lehman Trilogy. So as we mentioned earlier, this is kind of a long-anticipated show coming to Denver at the Denver Center Theater Company. It's playing in the Kilstrom Theater, which is the In the Round venue, which is absolutely perfect for this show because it's a 3-hander with 3 guys playing all the parts of this storied family, the Lehman Brothers. And it starts all the way back in like the 1840s with the original Lehman brother coming over, getting right off the boat, and somehow wound up in working in textiles.
Textiles, yeah. I think one of the things, I didn't know a ton about the Lehman Brothers. I've heard the name. I know that they fail in the 2008 stock market crash, but I didn't really know a ton about them. And it's really the first, it's 3 acts. 3 hours and 20 minutes. It's 2 intermissions. So prepare yourself accordingly.
Right.
I was sitting next to some folks who had not realized it was quite that long. So I ended up. Never mind. I'm not going to say this.
Okay.
But they were not prepared for how long it was. But it was very, very well acted. It's in the 3 actors that they bring in. Their characterizations and the switches that they were able to do were just incredibly impressive feat of storytelling. And that's going to be on the Denver Center stage through June 2nd.
Right. I would say, I think we both agreed that it really didn't seem like it needed to be that long. It's not one of the things like, well, it was 3 hours and 20 minutes, but it just flew by. It's like, it did not fly by for me. It was like, and because it's just 3 actors with a very minimal set, there's not a lot of modulation in like kind of what you're looking at. And they don't even change costumes, which I thought was odd as they go forward, 100, 200 years or whatever it is.
Totally agree. For some reason, they really leaned into the minimalism, which is an interesting choice given that the script is already so minimalistic.
Uh-huh.
I've seen some other productions in which it's not that stripped down. And so I do wonder if that choice to like really lean into minimalism in a play in which you are just like looking at 3 actors for 3+ hours was maybe not the best choice. Because again, like you said, it really, you do feel the runtime. This is not one of those shows in which you're like, it just flew right by me. And I definitely saw some folks who, after Act 2, they ended up sneaking out. I saw about 10 or 15 people who,
really?
After the second act, I guess they didn't sneak out. They walked out.
Yeah.
They walked right out the front door. And so I stopped one of them. I was like, there's a third act, right? They looked at each other. They were like, oh, we didn't know that. And then they were like, you know what? No, we're still going home. And I was I think if you're going to do a 3+ hour play, you either need to start earlier because our showtime starts at 7:30, and I believe normal showtimes start at 7. So you're getting out of that theater pretty late regardless. And I'm not so super sure if the Denver Center has done a great job at communicating how long the play is.
Mm-hmm.
It's called the Lehman Trilogy, so you're like 3 acts. I guess that does make sense. It's in the title, but there is a difference from when you're actually sitting there and experiencing all that time passing.
Right. So I'll ask you, Toni, if you didn't know that this was a adaptation of a real story, do you think that the Lehman Trilogy had a good plot? Did it feel like it tied itself up? Because I didn't.
No, I mean, it just kind of, they really do just drop you into the financial failure. The story to me kind of feels like it pitters out after Philip.
Yeah.
It doesn't really have a cohesive ending, or like, here's what you should learn from this, or here's what we can take forward. And no, not every play needs to be that explicitly preachy or thematically connected. But, if we're going to sit there that long,
so you
I
need
do
maybe a
kind
little
of
more
expect it to
payoff.
come together.
Yeah, and they kind of glossed over the collapse at the end. They didn't spend a lot of time on that at all. So so I don't know. It kind of a mixed review for me. I mean, it certainly had a lot of great parts and certainly great performances. Of course, the Killstrom has all these whiz bang cool effects with the turntable, and it's got vents where they can shoot steam up, and there's the fire scene and all this stuff. So it's
I thought that
visually
looked silly.
cool. Did you?
I thought the fire looked silly. Every time that the fire thing came on from under, I was like, ooh, look at the smoke they're coming out. To me, it looked like vape clouds. I was like, this doesn't look fun. This isn't impressive.
All right. Well, maybe that's not the best example of a headliner for us because we were a little mixed on it, but it's certainly, it's very interesting play. Just, I think if you go in like knowing what you're getting into a little bit more, you might, be able to gird your loins more. So, Toni, what's next? What have you got also on your list?
Next on my list is one I am very excited about. It's Whiskey from Strangers. We talked about this briefly last week, and I did a preview about it for Westward. Live music meets Denver lore in this kind of hybrid concert theater performance between Grapefruit Lab and Teacup Gorilla, who is a local indie band. It's about friendship, loss, identity, and a cursed pool that makes men soft. That one's over in Buntport Space through June 3rd, and I will be there next Friday. I'm looking forward to that one, and I just read Kit's review. It sounds like it's a really cool experience, from everything from the headliners who kind of are open the piece each night, a different one, musical group, to just the actual performance itself. Sounds very kinetic.
Yeah, definitely something off the, far outside the mainstream, of kind of a hybrid thing with theater and concert elements to it. So yeah, that sounds really cool. And yeah, the review is up on our site now. So the next one I would mention is the Prom, which is starting on May 24th at Town Hall Arts Center in Littleton. So this is a musical about a girl who invites her girlfriend to prom in her Indiana town. And of course, the conservatives come out in force and they're up in arms. But it also so happens that there were these Broadway stars that they had a flop and they were looking for some meaningful cause, and they hear about this story, so they go to this town and show up to help. It sounds like a really interesting story. It's it's a musical, so that should be a lot of fun at Town Hall, and it's set May 24th through June 22nd.
The next headliner I want to introduce is a company at the Denver Center. So we were just talking about it. I'm working on a preview of it right now. This is the national tour of Company, and it's set on Bobby's 35th birthday. All of her friends are asking why she isn't married and why she hasn't started a family. And so this is a little bit different than maybe some other versions of Company that you may have seen in the past. This is based off of the recent revival Company, in which they gender swap the lead. So instead of a male Bobby, it's a female Bobby, and you're kind of dealing with this. It's a little bit more, as Brittany Coleman said in our interview, it's a little bit more hard hitting, because you're kind of that question of why aren't you married is more associated with the biological clock, as she mentioned. She's like, there was a lot more pressure as a woman, I feel, to get married because I need to have a baby. And she's like, so they kind of visualize that with a lot of different elements throughout the production. It's got a very Alice in Wonderland kind of vibe. And that will be at the Denver Center from May 22nd through June 2nd.
Okay. And is that a touring show?
It is a touring show.
Okay.
It's the first national tour of Company.
Okay. Great. Well, next up, I would mention, and I'll try and pronounce this properly, Les Sylphides. So this is a ballet. It'll be at the Boulder Ballet May 17th through 19th. And our reviewer, Alice Caterlin, who is a bona fide dance reviewer, will be at that. But this has an interesting history. It was considered the first plotless or abstract ballet. So it's not really a story to it. And it was debuted in 1909 in Paris, and it's set to Chopin music. And so Sylphs, and this is Sylph, Sylph, they're air spirits, and they were created by Paracelsus in the 16th century. And so the basic premise is that there's a lone male, the poet, and he's surrounded by these woodland nymphs or sylphs dancing in the moonlight. So that sounds really cool. If you like ballet, and I don't know where they. I'm sorry, I don't know where this is performed, but hopefully they have lots of tickets because that sounds really cool.
That does sound really interesting.
Yeah. What's next?
Next piece I'll introduce is a comedian who's going to be coming through. Her name is Kelsey Cook. She is a very funny stand-up comedian. She will be at Comedy Works from May 16th through May 18th. She's got a kind of a long relationship with Comedy Works. She recorded her first stand-up special, The Hustlers, there, and she told me this great story about how she was recording there and on the same night as a big playoff game here in the city. And so she was worried people weren't going to show, and then people did show. They got super drunk, and then that was a whole thing. But her special ended up coming out amazing. The headliners, you can watch it on YouTube, and now she'll be here live. She's just doing her latest hour. So she's a very funny lady, and I'm looking forward to getting to see her here in Denver. And one of her shows is already sold out. So if you are looking forward to, you want to see her, I would get on it.
All right. That sounds like fun. And then the other one I want to mention is another tough one to pronounce, but it's Cullad Watah. Culladwatah. Cullad Watah. Tony's giving me the thumbs up, so I guess I didn't murder it there. So this is a curious theater show that'll be opening May 16th and run through June 15th. So it's a time-bending play that takes on the Flint water crisis and dives into they say the poisonous choices of the outside world and the contamination within, and how we make decisions for our families when there aren't really great options. So this is a regional premiere, and it features an intergenerational cast of all Black women. So it's got some song, ritual, and reckoning. So that one sounds like a banger at Curious, and they always do a great job. And I would definitely go into that one.
That's their final show of the season, too. It's and directed by their artistic director, Jada Susanna Dixon.
Great.
And she always does a magnificent job directing. Yeah. So I guess my final headliner is the Hombres at Vintage Theater. This is another regional premiere over there. It's a fresh and nuanced look at the complexity and intimacy of male friendship. It follows Julian, who is a gay Latin instructor, as he kind of clashes with the straight, macho, Latino construction workers who are just outside of his studio. This is being directed by Dana Hart-Wright, who's a Vintage board member, and it sounds like a really kind of fun play from what I was talking. I've been chatting a little bit with the cast as well, and they're like, don't let the kind of premise fool you. It's a really sweet play, and really funny. It's got some really, really heartfelt moments in there. So that'll be over in Vintage's smaller space, and that's going to be opening May 31st and run through July 14th.
All right. Next, we're going to go all the way down to Southern Colorado to mention that Creede Repertory Theater is opening their new season May 25th with Ken Ludwig's Baskerville. So this runs all the way into September, so plenty of chances. But of course, Creede, their repertory program, they have several shows going on this summer. So it's something we always recommend, that if you get the opportunity to take a beautiful drive down to Creede, you can stay there for a couple of days and see 3 or 4 shows and some of the other stuff they've got going on down there. So this one, so Ken Ludwig, of course, is known as he's a great farce writer. So he did like Moon Over Buffalo and Lend Me a Tenor, things like that. So this is another fast-paced comedy about Sherlock Holmes and Dr. Watson, and they're trying to crack the mystery of the Hound of the Baskervilles before a family curse dooms its newest heir. And so this is 5 actors portraying more than 40 characters, so it's one of those kind of things. All right, Tony, so you've actually done your 5, but you have a bonus one, so we're going to turn it up to 11.
These go to 11.
It's not in May, so forgive me, but it's June 1st, so I think I justified it in that way. It's The Lightning Thief, the Percy Jackson musical at the Aurora Fox Arts Center. This one's kind of pretty in addition to being a very fun musical based off of a best-selling series of children's books that I can personally attest is quite good. I grew up on those. They're about the Greek gods and their kind of battles. And their kids, their demigod kids, they go to this Camp Half-Blood, and Percy has to kind of go on this quest to find the lightning thief who has stolen Zeus's lightning bolt. So in addition to this being a very fun musical based off of that, it's also special for the Aurora Fox's Art Center because opening night is also the grand reveal of its iconic neon sign. They'll be returning it, restoring it to its origins in 19th color palette and condition by Da Vinci Sound System Inc. So if you are interested in seeing them light the light with the lightning feed over at the Aurora Fox, that'll be on June 1st, their opening night. And the musical runs through the 23rd of June.
Right. Yeah, that's a really special thing. And would you call that sign design like Art Deco or something like that? I'm not sure. Okay. Because, it's one of these iconic vertical signs that used to be all around America that people just love. And they're not easy to keep up, and they're old and stuff like that. So I don't know. Are they updating it with like LED or are they just going old school? Do you know anything about that?
I actually don't know anything about that. I guess that would be a question for Da Vinci Sign System Inc.
Yeah. So, the Aurora Fox is in this old Quonset hut, which, these things were made in like they were used in World War II. And they, when World War was over, we got all these Quonset huts all over the place that, they were cheap to buy. They were kind of like army surplus. And so you could create like an instant building out of them. But if you ever get a chance, go on Aurora Fox's website. They've got a really cool history section that was practically destroyed by fire at one point, and it was rejuvenated and turned from a movie theater into the Aurora Fox. So it's got a kind of cool history. So, all right. Well, my last one is another one way down south in Durango. They're doing their 14th annual 10-minute play festival, May 24th through 26th. So these will have both new playwrights and professional playwrights. And they're working on the theme mystery, murder, and mayhem, and they'll have 8 to 10 plays. So I wanted to mention this because I really feel like short plays are, I don't know, I'd like to see more of them. And I think I really love short plays. You're in and out, and if you didn't like that one, there's another one coming up. And have you ever been to a festival with short plays, Toni?
I cannot believe we didn't talk about this before because that's the perfect segue. I was just at a short play festival on Monday night of this week. Betsy's Plays with Fire festival, which is their series of new work that's continuing all throughout the month of May. More information is available on Betsy's website, but I was just at an evening of short plays on Monday. It was 8 of them. There was 4 in the first half and 4 in the second half. And the first half was themes on variations on love, and the second half was kind of meditations on otherworldly afterlife things. And yeah, it was. They were all written by Colorado playwrights, and it was a really fun evening because I thought most of them really worked well. But even when I wasn't feeling one, you move right to the next one pretty quickly.
Yeah, that's great. They're fun, and I kind of feel the same way with short films and like short animated shorts. There's a lot of them on Netflix, but they're not that easy to find. They're not really curated that well, but I'm a big fan of the short thing. And I wanted to ask you about, you judged a play contest the other day at a high school. Can you tell us about that real quick?
Yes, I can. Yeah, I was just one of 3 judges over at Frederick High School near Longmont's one-act play festival. It was yesterday, so that's at the time we're recording this, of May 11th. It was this kind of a senior showcase. So the seniors picked these plays, they directed them, and then actually they didn't have any assistance from their drama teachers at all. They just spent about 3 to 4 weeks building these plays up, rehearsing them, costuming them, working with their own stage manager to kind of get the show on its feet. And it was a fun morning and / afternoon. You got everything from one of the plays was about a girl winning a science fair to this really funny play called When Bad Things Happen to Good Actors, which was the parody of The Wizard of Oz that went really awry, to this kind of drama, The New Margot, that was about this girl actually who murdered her friend. And then finally this kind of more lighthearted How to Kiss a Girl play. And it was really fun. I really enjoyed getting to go out there and helping cheer on and support and offer some critiques to the next generation of theater artists.
Cool. And did they have rules around what they could do, like a certain amount of time or space or anything like that?
They did. So they had 30 minutes max, and you had 5 minutes to set up, 5 minutes to tear down. And yeah, so that was kind of the rules of the festival, there was no rules on what you could do. You could go under 30 minutes. Some of the plays were a lot shorter than others, but those were kind of the general operating rules for the plays.
Okay, yeah, because when we used to do when I was involved in play competitions with the Backstage Theater, they were the American Community Theater Coalition rules. So you had 10 minutes to set up, an hour to perform, 10 minutes to strike, and then you would have these adjudicators come out and tell you what you did wrong. So anyway, well, that sounds great. That was nice to get invited to being judge. Being a judge is fun. So.
It
Cool.
was a lot of fun. It was fun to just get to talk with my other fellow judges. Shout out to Emma Dinier, who is a theater teacher over at Thunder Valley, and then Nellie Spears, who is she works primarily at Backstory Theater in Broomfield, where she's the director of programming and education. So it was also great to just get to chat with others in the theater community.
Yeah, for sure. All right. Well, hold on, and we're going to get to my interview with Chris Medina from Funky Little Theater Company in just a sec. So hold on and stay tuned. Let's go. All right. Well, we are here with Chris Medina from Funky Little Theater Company in Colorado Springs. And Chris, it's great to have you on the podcast. Thanks for taking the time.
Hey, thank you so much for the invite, and I've listened to many a podcast from you guys, so consider it honored. Thank you.
Yay, a fan. All right. Well, cool. Well, there was something on your website that caught my eye called Stay and Play, so I wanted to talk about that in just a little bit, but I wanted to ask a little bit about Funky Little Theater Company, where it's at in its evolution. How long has it been around? Were you the founder?
I am the founder and continuing producing artistic director, and we started in 2013. We got to do one show in a little storefront that was shared with a dance studio, which unfortunately got an eviction notice on our opening night. So we got to do our show, and then we had to move out. But I guess this dance studio had been late on rent for 10 years, so it wasn't a surprise. And then the building ended up being sold and blah, blah, blah. So, we did one show there. We were homeless for a year. We got to do a straight play, at the Iron Springs Chateau, about the life and death of Emma Crawford, which is, what the coffin races are based off of. If anybody knows Manitou Springs and the folklore that goes on there, every year they do this massive parade called the Coffin Races, and it's based on this life and death of this woman that moved here from Boston. So we did a play there, and then about a year after that, we got a little space in the old north end of Colorado Springs, and it was a Curves for Women originally. So we turned that into a theater, and that was our home for 5 years. We did tons and tons of plays in that space, but we capped out about 40. I think 50 was what our max was supposed to be for audiences. It has since been turned into a little brewery, so we are no longer there. After that strip sold, we moved to Con Street off of 21st Street, which is where the Millabo Art Theater, it was actually their second location. And we were there for about 2.5 years, and then that's when the pandemic hit. And we joined forces with the Westside Community Center, not too far away from there. So yeah, it was just hard we love having our own brick and mortar place. We loved having our own facility. It gives you the freedom to be artistic and really work with all schedules. But I just couldn't justify my little artist heart to have to come up with $2,800 a month during COVID, when we couldn't be performing. And it'd be different if it was it's just 3 months and you can tough it out, but nobody knew. We didn't know that it was going to be a year or 2 years or 2.5 years. So essentially we lost that space. We joined forces with the Westside Community Center, which is an old elementary school that was built in the early 1900s. And they've been operating as a community center for the past 20 years. And yeah, so when we went there, Woodman Valley Chapel was running the facility, and they kind of just let us have keys, and they're don't burn it down. We trust you guys. And we're awesome, good times. And then the city of Colorado Springs stepped in and took over a couple of years ago. And then we haven't really done any shows since, until we did 12 Angry Men in March. So 12 Angry Men in March was our first full production that we did for the Westside Community Center. We rehearsed at the Westside Community Center. We held auditions at the Westside Community Center. Because before that, we had a couple little traveling shows that we did like one-off, days or weekends there. But 12 Angry Men was our first thing since the ownership change or the management change.
Uh-huh. So Colorado Springs is now oversees so Westside Community Center is now operated by the city of Colorado Springs.
By the city, yep. Which has come with its own bag of challenges. I mean, you have, people from the city operations side and the people that they've assigned to like run certain parts of the programs that none of are very theater minded. So it's always a tricky business trying to infiltrate arts into business, especially like city government. Because really they're like, well, we need the money, we need this. And it's like, well, I understand that, but we also would love to find a way to like, because we're not making any money either, right? So really all the money we're making is going to them. And we would love to eventually turn the tables a little bit and pay more to our artists because everyone's a volunteer, so I would love to start having that stake in the game, but I don't know if that's our forever home. I mean, I think I could see it being a good place for us for a long time, but we just told ourselves we'd get through this year and see how things work out. So we're down one show. We're in rehearsal for the next. So we're seeing how things go. But really the fun thing that I love about, all of like politics and challenges aside, what I love about being at the Westside Community Center is that it almost created an opportunity for us to pivot in like what we put out as content and as product and as productions, because we had in our history have done a lot of world premieres. We've done a lot of new plays and new works, and we had LGBT short play festival and we've done 24-hour festivals. But being at the Westside Community Center, there is an older demographic that frequents the center. So we have a lot of, 60 plus people that frequent that building every single day. So I thought it would be a disservice to us if we didn't at least try to cross that gap somehow and be like, hey, we want to do shows that appeal, maybe not a full season's worth, but at least show them that we see them and we want to appeal to their senses. And we've done a handful of shows there that we've done very, very, very well with because we picked the right shows. We did a Truman Capote piece that Mike Brommel wrote, and Eddie Schumacher was in, and we're doing it at the Denver Center this coming weekend. But we brought that show down for a weekend at Funky, and it was a little different. And I think it was kind of like old Funky standards, and a lot of people really loved it. But then there were a handful of people that are like, I don't know what I'm walking into. And I think that's the cool part about theater that we've missed is like kind of challenging people a little bit. Because now, so with 12 Angry Men, it's classic and people love it for what it is, but it's not necessarily edgy, boundary pushing theater, so. Right. So it was fantastic, actually. We had pretty much a sold out run.
Great.
The audiences reacted very well to it. The people that came to reviewed it also responded well to it. April came and saw it.
Yeah.
Which we get to see her randomly throughout different shows, and so she reached out and she was able to come see it. And I always appreciate what she has to say because there's not many people that review shows in our neck of the woods, if you will. So.
Yeah, it's been April. We've got April there, and we have a newer reviewer named Judith Sears now in Colorado Springs. So I'm hoping to be able to cover more theater down there on our site.
Yeah, that'd be great. And I think there's a lot of good stuff happening down here. And I think as we continue to grow, hopefully people, will see that.
Yeah. Would you say that there's kind of a small number of theaters in Colorado Springs, given the size of the city? I mean, there's Springs Ensemble Theater Company, and then there's the two big university programs. What else? There's some in the periphery, like the Iron Springs,
Yeah, so Iron Springs still does full programming in the melodrama in Manitou. Star Bar Players, I think, is a little dormant right now. They tried to kind of springboard themselves back into the basement of the Carter Payne, and it was just a really small space, and it was I think maybe a little difficult. I mean, I don't know. I didn't get to see any of the newer productions that they did down there, but I think just logistically looking at like how low your ceilings are, how many seats you can fit in there, is it beneficial to have to pay rights and have to pay for costs and all this stuff? So Star Bar, as far as I know, is still around. Theater to Art still around. There's a little company called Counterweight. They do kind of salon style theater. They're in an art gallery downtown. And then there's a couple little newer things that are popping up that we'll see if they find some traction. Because, for every handful that start out, some of them make it, but I haven't seen any of the newer guys yet. But yeah. So and the Mat, obviously, the Middle Bar Theater. So
yeah.
They're doing well down there by Ivy Wilds, and. Yeah, and I mean, our two big houses are definitely, Theater Works it's housed with UCCS, and then the Fine Arts Center, which is housed with Colorado College. So, there's, and it's funny because one of our first shows we ever did, we had an actor named Jude Bishop that came in, worked with us, and he's from Galveston. He's from Texas. And the town that he came from, like in Galveston, like their population was not even a fraction of what we had, but he said there was probably 2 to 3 times theaters going on there, based on like the size of the city and the population. So even back then, and we worked with him 10 years ago, to like know that was a thing 10 years ago. Like that's still crazy to see that, I don't know. Is it because we're so spread out? Is it because we don't like have good public transportation? Is it because everything is just either downtown, like there's nothing out east or south or north? Everything's just kind of, so I don't know. I think there's opportunity, and I think as things continue to grow, hopefully there's some pockets of potential that we can hit, because I think there are some very talented people down here, and I can never deny
absolutely. That. So in the community center that you're working out of now, how many seats can you get in there?
When we did Nonsense a couple years ago, and this was still kind of COVID-y times, we had about 120 people in there. But it's like a gym, auditorium / common use space from an old elementary school that happens to have a stage on one side of it. So for this season, I kind of whittled it down to like 50 or 60 seats, because I feel like I want to keep it a little intimate. I want to keep people close to the stage. I don't know if it's very enjoyable for someone to come and sit in a room and be, 70 feet back from the stage when, there's rows and rows of people in front of them, which maybe people don't mind, but, we like to err on the side of hopefully that, actors can project and people can hear them fine, but then, you coincide with having a potentially older demographic in the room. So then do you want to have, assisted like hearing devices and have mics and have choir mics and have all these things? So that's been a learning curve for us, because all of our spaces have been potentially very, very much smaller than this. So, room to be big, but we're keeping it humble, and with it 50, I think is good. And I think we can keep fulfilling and selling out 50, 60 seat houses. But with 12 Angry Men, which is funny because we ended up with 2 canceled shows because the city shut down for 2 days with the snowstorms in March. We ended up having to like trade people over from one show to the other to add them to here. We had front row tickets that were sold for certain shows and the other, and it was a mess. But really, we ended up doing 2 shows on our closing Saturday for 100 people each. So we really played our final Saturday for 200 people instead of just the 55 that would have been in there. So there's room to add chairs, and it's cool. And I think that the demand was there. So could we have kept it going for maybe another weekend? Maybe, but it was, and that's what's so cool about theater too, is that it's so ephemeral. And if you don't go see it, you don't invest the time or the interest, like go now, like you miss it. Regardless if people record it, regardless if they're, archival footage, regardless, whatever. But like, if you don't go, like you miss out. And I think that's something that was very special for us for 12 Angry Men. And our cast was pretty stacked. And I think we had some very, very talented people. All of them, actually, everyone was very talented, and everyone brought their A game to that show.
Great.
Including a local actress, named Sally Walker, who she's been on stages in Colorado Springs for years and years. And we ended up having to replace an actor after our final dress. So after our final dress, we had to replace an actor. So I was literally at Sally's house at 11:30 on Thursday night, reading through the script with her. and she stepped in, and she was with us opening night. So it was very special, and it was very like the electricity that was in the air from that opening night. Like just everyone's like, "Shit, this is happening." All right, everyone just go with it. Everyone just go with it. And so all the actors hadn't worked with her before. They didn't know like what talent she was bringing to it, and like the backstory that she built in less than 24 hours, and like her commitment to character work, and her commitment to like delivery and listening, and being a trusting actor on stage. Like it was a one of a kind experience that I will always remember. So I'm very grateful that we got to do that show. It's very cool. So
all right.
Yeah.
Well, we'll talk in just a sec about your upcoming show, but I wanted to ask about this stay and play thing that I noticed on your website. And maybe it's not a huge deal, but I thought it was cool because the idea is, it says, let your kids play while you watch a play. And what kind of reception have you had for that? And how does that work?
We've only offered one so far. And I think what we were trying to do with the stay and play is that there is a licensed school, a community school in the Westside Community Center. So they operate there Monday through Friday. They offer, special events, and they do camps and workshops and stuff for kids. They have a huge musicality portion to their program. So I've just gotten to know Michelle and Congo pretty well over this past year, because they are newer to the community center. And it's something I've always wanted to do as Funky, as a theater company, is to be able to provide an opportunity for you to bring your kids. And I feel like we're already spread pretty thin because we have, 5 people doing 5 different jobs each. But then how do we assign someone to be a babysitter? Right. And then also in a legal matter, like how do we make sure that the kids are safe? And how do we make sure that they aren't wandering around? How do we make sure that, so really when it came time for the licensed and trusting part of things, I feel like people would be more apt to want to bring their kids to a place that is designated to be that, instead of like, I wouldn't want you to bring your kids and pay $15 extra and we're just going to put them in a room and put a movie on and, give them popcorn or whatever. Like that's not really, I mean, it's okay. I mean, people can do that, but I was really looking at this opportunity to embrace United Hearts, which is a school that is in the Westside Community Center, and to be able to like offer us something just a little more substantial. And what I love about the opportunity is that they do have music is a huge part of what they do. Free bass play or free play is what they work a lot. They also have organized activities, and they have a playground, and they have all these things. So when I approached them, like they were ready at the jump. They were like, yeah, that sounds like a great idea. Let's do it. So I think for us on the Funky side, I think we don't want to like oversaturate things or overdo something, or, we don't want to set up these days and then have like 2 people show up to one thing. So we kind of I made the choice to go and pick one date per production and try and target people towards that day, meaning that the second Saturday of every show we have this season at the Westside Community Center would be a stay and play date, so that parents can plan and, be able to go out to dinner as a family, at 5 o'clock. And then when you come, literally walk the kids down the hall, drop them off at United Hearts, come see the play. You can go check on them at intermission, or, just pick them up after the show. And I really wanted to give parents an opportunity to do something like that, because I think we are in a pretty family-centric town. And I think a lot of people think about that thing. And especially nowadays with like childcare or babysitters, there's no way if you have multiple kids that you're getting out of the house for anything probably less than $50 to $100, right? Yeah. So for this, like, we're charging $15 for per child, but then we're doing a sibling discount so that if, say, you have 3 kids, you would pay $15 for one, and then it'd be $5 for each additional kid. So then you're paying, essentially $25 for your kids to be watched and entertained and engaged while you're watching a show. And with somebody that education is a first and foremost thing for that. So, yeah, I think it's something that I've really wanted to do for a long time. And I really hope that it takes off, because I would love to offer it for every Saturday that we do a show.
Yeah.
But we're just testing it out this year.
You're a father of young children. A lot of times, when people have kids, they kind of write off being able to go out for a while. And on the other side, there's always, theaters are always trying to figure out how to get people in the house and kind of eliminate roadblocks. And that can be one of them, is the babysitter. So this is, I think it's really cool thing that, and of course, you've got that synergy between the existing childcare facility that's there, so that makes it natural. So yeah, that's really neat. So you're going to be doing that for the next show, Four Old Broads coming up.
Yep.
So this,
so June 15th will be the day for that, for our next day in play. So we're hoping that, and I guess what I was going to say before is that what I love about this is that people are not paying Funky for the childcare. The money is going straight to United Arts. So we're not collecting any money. We're not taking anything off the top. We're just hoping that we're making it worthwhile for their directors, for their teachers, for their people to be there to engage with the kids. And then hopefully, there'll be some crossover because there's, a drumming nonprofit that the couple that runs United Hearts also runs. So I think what's the saying, like the tide rises all boats, and like that's what I would love to see for the community center. And I would love for people to know that there is, and then people, always kind of knock the pickleball and the table tennis stuff because that happens during the day. Like that's what's there for the seniors, and there's not much light there after, in the evenings. So for as many people as we can get there, for as many people as we can expose to like the good stuff that the community center has going on, like then I think we're pulling our weight. And I would love to continue to see it to grow and to be able to have programming all the time, at night and on evenings and weekends. So the working families that cannot be there, Monday through Friday, 9 to 3, like we'll have an opportunity to come see stuff on the other days, but baby steps.
Great. Well, let's talk about the next show. Four Old Broads by Leslie Kimball opens June 7th, and the stay and plays on June 15th. It runs through June 22nd. So I know you were talking about trying to appeal to some of the older set. It sounds like one that might pique their interest. So tell me, how'd you pick this play? What's it about?
It is a silly, sassy, trashy, like take of just, and what I think I love about this show too is that, like, especially in Colorado Springs, like there's this, and maybe it's everywhere. Maybe it's not just Colorado Springs, but in Colorado Springs for sure, there's this idea that all these plays happen, right? All these people can go out and audition, and usually women of a certain age kind of get lumped into one, kind of comedic supporting role, or maybe it might be the matriarch or something like August Osage County, right? But for the most part, it's, the older grandmas are kind of like the comedic relief or whatever. And usually each play has one. So you have, our 5 or 10 prolific women of that certain age always kind of go against each other to try and go for this one part. So what Funky has been doing for years is being able to give the opportunity for the ladies of a certain age come together and be able to play. So we've had a bunch of shows in our time that are female centered, that are an older age group, because we want to show that there's representation, not like just racially, but also like age gap, right? So like we want to show that we have people that are in their 20s up there doing shows. We have people in their 60s and 70s up there doing shows. And then we have like this intergenerational kind of mix happening right now because with Four Old Broads, the show was just funny. I kind of had a couple of people in mind when we picked the show, and the young lady that I had, Karen Kennedy, when I asked her to direct the show, and she read it and she thought it was hilarious, and it made her laugh out loud a couple of times. I was like, I'll take that as a good sign.
Yeah.
So being able to hand off a show and trust somebody else to direct, because that's not why I started the company. I didn't start the company to want to direct and do every single thing all the time, but to be able to bring people together to do something that they love. So Karen has taught high school for many, many years. She's a retired teacher. She loves to travel. So I was able to snag her just enough time to work on this show. And what I also love about this particular piece is that we advertised the auditions like at the community center, and we had open auditions, and we said anybody was welcome to come, and people from the community center. So people from those pickleball groups and those table tennis groups and those line dancing groups saw the poster, and they came and auditioned and got cast in the show. So like that is the ultimate like success for us, because like that's the camaraderie, like that's the cross pollination that we want. We don't want it to be that, yeah, I mean, we can cast our people from outside and we can do all this stuff, but like it's great when you get to see your friends up there on the stage. So that was the point. And that was really just doing something fun, because I think people are in still a post-COVID rebound of like testing the waters of going out. So really I want to, 12 Angry Men was a substantial piece of theater that we did, and really everybody enjoyed. but I really want to like make sure that we have comedic offerings because I think comedy is where it's at. And I think that we do it pretty well. So looking for comedy, looking for multiple women of a certain age in a cast. And Leslie Kimball has written this show, and she actually has a couple companion pieces. And some of the shows we've done in the past kind of have the same trend, you know, because we did a Double White Texas Christmas before COVID, and then after COVID we did Honky Tonk Hissy Fit, which is a Jones, Hope, and Wooten piece. There's like 3 authors, and they've cranked out tons of plays, and they're all really successful. Like they are all, I mean, they write them, and people will go to them. And literally, we sold tickets to Double White Texas Christmas based on the name alone. So, like, any research, any theories there is about theater, like I still sometimes am baffled at like what sells, what doesn't sell, why things don't sell, why things sell well. I think that's the like magic of theater too, because you're just like, it makes no sense. It makes no sense why. And then you would ask people checking in, you're like, hey, how'd you hear about the show? Or, you know, like, I don't know, I saw the paper, it sounded funny. You're like,
Honky Tonk Hissy Fit is a great title too. I mean,
yeah. And so those are like, Honky Tonk Hissy Fit was a sequel to Double White Texas Christmas. So we had most of the cast return. So we got to have kind of that fun aspect to it. So, you know, maybe we'll see how Four Old Broads is received. And I think we're, you know, 40% sold like capacity now. And, you know, we're still over a month out from the show. So we're looking forward to seeing what comes down. And usually we're not a huge pre-sale kind of theater until really the weeks leading up to it. So that gives me hope that we're going to have some good houses for this production. And just 4 old ladies and 4 old broads, I suppose, that are wanting to go on a vacation from their assisted living facility. And the administration has recently changed, and they have not filed the correct paperwork. So the mean nurse Pat is not going to let them go. So they devise a plan on how to trick her and be able to get out around under her and maybe expose a certain criminal activity and throw in an Elvis impersonator for good measure that might get manhandled by one of the ladies. We don't know. And I think it's just silly and it's just fun. And everyone's like, it's like Golden Girls. And I was like, actually, yeah, it's very, very reminiscent of Golden Girls and very kind of tongue in cheek. I wouldn't say there's anything crazily inappropriate about it, but I would give it definitely a PG, maybe PG-13 for colorful language. We'll call it that. So, but I think what I love about the show too is that it kind of shows like the different archetypes of the women of a certain age, because I think when hopefully these women that we're appealing to, or these groups of people, that they'll come and they'll be like, oh, that's my friend. Like that person on stage, I know that person. Or that person is, oh, she lives in my building. Or so that's the cool thing about like showing theater and relatability and connectability of like your own life. And yeah, we just want to show a good time and show that we care about everyone. And I think everyone deserves to do theater and have the opportunity to do it. And with 4 Old Broads in particular, I mean, it's happened with tons of other shows of ours, is that we have, you know, our seasoned players that have done funky shows for years and years and do theater all over town and all over the state. But then we get these handful of people, like these little pockets that come out of like, hey, I haven't done theater in, 30 years. And I would really love to get back into it. And you're like, yeah, man, come audition, come check it out, come watch a show, see if it's something you want to get into. So I think that's how we've survived as long as we have, is that we keep things fresh and we try to stay at the curve of never being stagnant. And I think it's in our name, right? Like we want to be funky. We want to be a little different. And I think what we accomplish repeatedly is that we kind of don't really do the same thing twice. So like every time someone comes to see a show, the next show that's out the gate is something completely different. In case in point would be, 12 Angry Men to 4 Old Broads. I don't know if they could do a numerical thing going on there. And, balance in the universe of the genders. And, so yeah. And then Mockingbird is our show in the fall, which is about a 11-year-old girl that's on the autism spectrum, and her family's dealt with this family tragedy, and she's trying to help them discover what the word closure means. And then in November and December, we're doing Blue Lake Jedi, which is a world premiere of Josh Hartwell's piece, which we're very excited about too. So we're trying to keep it different, and we're trying to keep things, changing a little bit and keep people interested and want to come. And, you can't please everybody in theater. That's a known fact, but we can try and appeal and show people that we hear them and we see them. So.
All right. Great. Well, Chris Medina, founder and producing artistic director at Funky Little Theater Company in Colorado Springs. 4 Old Broads is coming up June 7th through June 22nd. So you can find information at funkylittletheater.org. And you're a theater with an ER, not an RE. Got to keep track of those. So thanks so much for taking the time to be on the podcast, Chris. It was great to catch up with you.
Thanks, Alex. I really appreciate it.
All right. Well, that's it for this week's episode of the OnStage Colorado Podcast. Thanks so much to Chris Medina for coming on. We'll be back in a week or so with another interview, and I think I'm going to be talking to someone from one of the Fringe Fest performers again. So, they reached out as we talked about last week. They're kind of like bombarding, any theater writers around with all these shows, and of course, we can't cover all of them. In terms of previews, we're going to be out at Fringe as best we can. But anyways, I'm going to be interviewing Naomi Grossman, who has a show called American Horror Story, which is a takeoff on American Horror Story. And so she'll be performing at Fringe on June 6th and June 9th at the Bug. And so it sounded like a pretty interesting premise for a Fringe piece. So I'm going to be talking to her next week. And who knows who else might reach out and that we'll have on the pod. But that'll be great. So all right.
That'll be cool.
Yeah. If you haven't already, please subscribe to the OnStage Colorado Podcast, wherever you get your audio stuff. And if you're enjoying this program, let other theater lovers in your life know about us. And be sure to check out all of the reviews, news, other podcast episodes, and our full statewide theater calendar on the website at onstagecolorado.com. I'm Alex Miller.
And I'm Toni Tresca. And we'll see you at the show.
We'll be there.